Everybody switch on your camera. Yes. So today we are taking a look at India Again. India Again is in the prose section, written by Edward Morgan Foster. So switch on your cameras first, then we'll start the class. Okay. When you look at the topic of this essay, India Again, what do you understand by the topic? Why the writer has written India Again? Why not only India? So Edward Morgan Foster met an Indian.
Now he's talking about.
Hello? Yes? Hello?
Ma'am, now he's talking about developed India.
No. The author is not an Indian. The author is a Britisher. And he is writing, he comes to India. Before coming to India, he meets an Indian in his college. वो कॉलेज में एक इंडियन से मिलता है जिसका नाम है मसूद. And
yes ma'am,
and he was so impressed about.
मैम वो उन्हीं से मिलने इंडिया आया करते थे.
हाँ, yeah. और he is so impressed with Masood and the Indian culture, the Indian people, India, the place, the people, the culture, the religion, the thinking process of Indians, the stories of India, the ancient India, the changing India. So here we are talking about India before independence. The first time when he came to India, it was in 1912 and 13. The first time when he came to India to meet Masood. So he said it's a pleasure trip. It means he had been invited by Masood to come and visit India, come and see India. So the first time he came in 1912 and 13. And then he explored, he went all over India. He came to Patna, he was in Motihari. So he liked India. And wherever he went, he tried to connect with the people, to know everybody, each person's story, what it is like. What do Indian people think? How do they think? What is the ancient India? What is the changing India? What are the things that have changed? What are the things that remain the same? So he talks about a lot of things, and whatever he wrote, it was based on his experiences of the places which he visited, of the people whom he met, and the very details about. He talks about India, detailing every single bit. So the topic introduced is India Again. So the first time when he came to India in 1912, 13, and again he came in 21, 22. He stayed in India for quite some time. And the third time he came to India was 1940. In 1940s he came back again, but it was before independence. 1945. And he saw a lot of changes. Now this essay is about what are the 3 changes which Morgan saw in India when he came for the first and the second
मैम स्क्रीन
time.
नहीं दिख रहा।
नहीं दिखा रहे हैं अभी हम। I am speaking to you.
एक्सप्लेन कीजिए
मैम,
मैम।
मैं तो एक्सप्लेन ही कर रही हूँ ना। जरूर नहीं कि हर बात स्क्रीन देख के आप समझें, आप सुनते हुए समझ सकते हैं।
मैम आवाज भी थोड़ा धीमे आ रहा है मैम।
आवाज धीमी आ रही है, मे बी नेट कनेक्शन प्रॉब्लम होगा। So 3 बार वो आए। He came to India thrice, 1912, the first 2 time he came, he did not find any change. But the third time when he came, he saw a lot of changes. So India again is an essay, is a talk which is a broadcast from BBC. When he went back to India, the third time when he came to India and when he went back, roll number 20, Pallavi Tiwari, what are you doing? Are you talking to somebody? All right. So what are the things that he saw? जब पहली बार आए तो उन्होंने क्या देखा, दूसरी बार आए तो क्या देखा, और तीसरी बार आए तो उन्हें क्या क्या चेंजेस दिखा? What were the changes which he saw? And India again is based on his broadcast. जब वो वापस गए, the third time when he came and went back, there was a talk on a BBC, British Broadcasting Company. In a broadcast, he spoke about whatever he saw, what were the changes which he saw in India. So India again, the topic means that Foster loved India and he wanted to visit again and again. Now the question here is, why did Foster come to India?
मैम वो अपने फ्रेंड से मिलने।
Okay, fine. He came to India. If you can speak English, you'll be happy. So the first time he came to meet his friend, and then of course he was also invited by a pen club. A pen club was a writers club, a literary club, where the intellectuals used to meet and they used to talk about literature, they used to talk about art, culture. वो साहित्य का एक क्लब था, साहित्यिक लोगों का, जिसमें एम फॉस्टर को भी इनवाइट किया जाता था. So he used to come, and what are the things that he saw? So the topic defines itself. India again means that yes, he loved India and he wanted to come again and again. If you like something, you do it again and again. If you like to eat something which you like, then you would like to eat again and again. If there is a place you want to visit, कोई ऐसी जगह है जहाँ पर आपको जाना अच्छा लगता है, तो आप बार बार जाते हैं, बार बार जाना चाहेंगे. Similarly, in India again, topic defines itself. टॉपिक अपने आप में डिफाइन कर रहा है. अगेन जो लग गया है, इसका मतलब ही है Foster was almost in love with India and he liked India. He liked Indians, he liked India on the whole, and that is why he used to come to India. Basically, he came to meet his friend, but he came on a conference at the Pen Club in Jaipur. This was the third time when he came. जब तीसरी बार जब वो आए, he was visiting. He was invited in a conference at Jaipur, the Pen Club, the Progressive English Network. This was the club, and he was he was always invited in the club. So I'm going to share the screen with you. Can you see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the prose section, India Again, by Edward Morgan Foster. Now, about the author. Edward Morgan Foster was born in 1879 and died in 1970, and was the only remaining child of an architect. He was the only remaining child. It means there were other brothers and sisters who did not live. So he was the only remaining child of an architect who died when the child was just 1 year old. So Edward Morgan Foster lost his father when he was just 1 year old. His mother was from a middle class family. His father was from an upper class family, but his mother was from a middle class family. Morgan was the product of the English upper middle class. So then actually the family he was a product of upper middle class. He was educated at Tonbridge School in 1893-97 and at King's College, Cambridge. Foster wanted to know Indians and to explore their imaginative universe. So this line in itself speaks a lot. Like Foster wanted to know Indians. He wanted to know the Indian people. And what do they think? How do they think? What are the things that they imagine? What is their imagination? What is the reality? His first visit to India was mostly for pleasure and to visit his friend Masood. So it was a pleasure trip. He had come to meet Masood, whom he had met in 1910 at Cambridge. He visited India in 1912-13 and again in 21-22. About the works of Edward Morgan Foster. He wrote Passage to India, which is a novel, and Where Angels Fear to Tread. The meaning of tread means is to walk. See? Where angels are afraid to go. A Room with a View in 1908, and the Celestial Omnibus, a collection of pastoral and fanciful short stories. He penned 6 novels expressing his views on his experiences. Whatever Foster wrote, it was all based on his experiences. Now the essay India Again. India Again is taken from one of his broadcasts given on BBC on his return from India in 1945, which was his last visit. He had come to attend the Penn Conference at Jaipur. Foster loved India. As I said, he was one person who was so fascinated with the Indian culture, with the Indian people, with India on the whole. He had visited twice before, in 1912 and 1921. At the Penn Club, he met Indian intellectuals and was surprised at their interest in politics. So the third time when he came, he saw that the people were not talking about culture, the people were not talking about literature, the people were not talking about anything which they discussed earlier. But they were talking about politics. And Foster, this was surprising for the first change which you saw was that people were not talking about art and culture or literature So they were, nothing artistic was discussed. And the members there were only discussing about the deep interest in politics. So he found them keenly discussing political issues. This was the first change. As I said, Foster is writing about what are the changes which he saw when he came on the third time. Number one, people were not discussing on the agenda, they were discussing about politics. And it was not so earlier. Pehle aisa nahi tha. And when he tried to speak on the agenda of the club, no one paid attention. So when Foster wanted to talk about art and culture and literature, nobody paid attention and nobody bothered even. And then Foster thought that yes, politics now has taken their interest and people are more interested in talking about politics than about art and culture. So this was the first change. So Foster noticed that externally India was the same. Bahar se India was the same. And when he was traveling by train, through the dirty windows of the train, he saw the same landscape, wahi scenery, wahi landscape, wahi mysterious, enigmatic. Enigmatic means something mysterious. कि पता नहीं अपने आप में क्या राज छुपाए हुए हैं. And even sinister. और कभी कभी लगता था कि why this is sinister means evil. At that time, when people saw wherever Foster went, people looked at him with doubt, because he was not Indian. And this was disturbing. Poverty was seen everywhere. So he saw poverty everywhere. हर जगह गरीबी दिखी. बाहर से इंडिया सेम था. The same, everything was the same. Outside the pen club, the people were the same. They looked at him with doubt. वो जहां जाते थे उनको शक की नजर से देखते थे लोग, because India was still under the British rule. And this was mysterious. ये पहेली बन गई थी उनके लिए. वो समझ नहीं पा रहे थे, पर समझना चाहते थे. And this was disturbing. And हर जगह उन्होंने poverty को देखा. He saw poverty everywhere. And ये जो change नहीं हुआ है, this is the real India. The changelessness was the real India. People were talking politics, that was not the real India. Inside the pen club, whatever people were discussing, that was not the real India. But real India was the India which had not changed. So the first change we discussed, that people at the pen club were talking about politics instead of sahitya or literature or art or culture. This was the first change. And then he summarized that externally India is the same, but people's thoughts are changing. The way people are thinking, this is changing.
मैम sinister means क्या होता है?
Sinister मतलब होता है evil. Good and evil होता है ना.
Yes,
पहली evil मतलब sinister का something which is evil. मैंने कहा ना कि India was still under the British rule. और जब even Foster जहाँ जाते थे, Morgan Foster, तो तो उनको शक की नजर से देखता था, ये यहाँ पर क्यों आया है, क्या आया है. बट then Foster was on his trip to explore India. तो कभी कभी वो लोग मिस्टीरियस लगता था कि पहेली है, कि इनके लिए भी पहेली थी और लोगों के लिए भी ये पहेली बन गए थे. और इवन सिनिस्टर, सिनिस्टर मतलब होता है लोग शक की नजर से देख रहे थे कि कहीं कुछ हार्म तो नहीं पहुंचाएगा, समथिंग इवल, समथिंग सिनिस्टर, समथिंग डिस्टर्बिंग. सो पहले भी ऐसा हुआ करता था, 1912 में भी ऐसा हुआ था, 1921 में भी ऐसा होता, और द सेम थिंग इज being repeated, and the same feeling is getting when he is coming on, when he came on the third time. So externally India had not changed, India was just the same, but what had changed? People's views have changed, had changed, people's thinkings have changed, people's thought process has changed. And then Foster says that this is the real India. What has not changed is the real India. जो बदला नहीं है वो इंडिया नहीं है जो लोग आज अभी सोच रहे हैं, जो बोल रहे हैं, जो बात कर रहे हैं, पॉलिटिक्स. नो नो, दैट इज नॉट द रियल इंडिया. Externally, whatever India looks like, this is the real India. Now the second change. The first change made him, the first change upset him. He was disturbed by the first change. The second change made him happy. And what was that? It was the lifting of the Parda system, which was a welcome change. And it was a sign of freedom of women. Earlier, he had noticed that women were hardly ever seen. They did not come out of their houses. They did not come outside in the drawing room whenever Morgan was invited, and they remained inside. So women were never seen. They were hardly ever seen. Even in his second visit, he only saw some who were educated. And the second time when he came, he saw some of the women, some of them who were educated. But he was pleasantly surprised to see to see them out on the streets openly. And this time he was surprised to see that they were seen open in the streets. And at some conferences, they outnumbered the men. It means कोई कोई कभी कभी किसी पेन कॉन्फ्रेंस में they outnumbered the men. It means men were few and women were more. According to Foster, until gender justice is ensured, Indian nationhood and freedom is a distant dream. It means that if there is no gender equality, you cannot think about freedom. As I said, India was still under the British rule at that time. Now the third change. The third change which he saw was the buffet system. Indians had adapted the buffet system, which he really liked. And in his previous visits, he had painful experiences. Why painful? Because the sit-down dinner, you had to eat whatever they serve you. And he had to eat a lot of things which made him sick or something, because he says it was a painful experience. So whenever he was invited for dinners, he was painfully upset about it. But now, thanks to the buffet system, it was a big relief that he could only eat whatever he wanted. So get this word straight. This is buffet. It is a French word where the T is silent. So how will you pronounce this? Buffet. So these were the three changes which you saw in India. So at the Pen Club, one of the questions hotly discussed. Now he's talking about India. So what else was happening in India? So at the Pen Club, one of the questions hotly discussed was the use of English in India. Those from the north preferred to speak Hindi or Urdu. Those from Bengal, they preferred to speak Bengali, but writers from the south preferred English. And majority of the people Foster met spoke English. So whenever he was going on trains, traveling by trains, people used to speak Hindi, but the moment they saw Foster, they started speaking English. And Foster writes that Indians spoke very good English. So Foster's last visit came to a sudden end. And the last time when he came to India and when he went back, that was the last time in 1945. He was back in London in December midnight. And when he went back home, it was midnight. And he had a lot of problems. What were the problems? Like there were no trains connecting to his home, and all the restaurants were closed because it was midnight. And he was remembering his visits to Delhi. And whenever he used to come to India, there were a lot of people who used to come to welcome him. And it was not so. When he went back home, he was alone. It was cold, December night, and he wanted to go home, but he could not. There was nothing to commute. He could not find anything to take him home. And he was also hungry, and all the restaurants were closed. So he says that what a difference when he comes to India, people treat him like a VVVIP. But now when he has come home, there's no one to see him at the station, and he's all alone. So this is how he compares India, and his going back was the last time when he went back, and then he made a talk on the BBC and how we got this India again. So hence the author has attempted to elaborate the Indian's life in its various true colors. So he talks about India, he talks about the places, he talks about the people, he talks about how India is gradually changing, but yes, only internally people have not people have changed, but externally India, what I feel is India still remains to be the same. Even today, you can say that the people's thoughts are changing. लोगों में बदलाव आ रहा है, लोगों की सोच में बदलाव जरूर आ रहा है, लेकिन बाहर से इंडिया में कोई चेंज आपको लगता है क्या? डू यू थिंक इंडिया इज चेंजिंग?
No, ma'am.
इट इज जस्ट द सेम.
यस मैम.
मैम लोगों की थिंकिंग बदल रही है ना.
मैम चेंज हो गया मैम पूरा.
बाहर से भी चेंज हो गया?
यस मैम.
क्यों? गांव में तो वही पॉवर्टी है, वही गरीबी है.
नो मैम, कहाँ है गाँव में? शहर से ज्यादा विकास है मैम गाँव.
मैं अभी की बात नहीं कर रही हूँ, तो आप पर छोड़ देते हैं. What are the changes which you see? Can you write down the changes which you see in India?
मैम रोड, लाइट.
मैम पर्दा प्रथा.
मैम लड़कियां पढ़ने लगी हैं.
मैम नीतीश सरकार साइकिल देने लगे हैं.
Okay.
अब लड़कियों को मैम पढ़ाया जा रहा है, पहले तो नहीं पढ़ाया जाता था.
पहले तो आपने देखा ना कि he was surprised that women were staying outside. They were out from the parda system and all that. So
Woman freedom.
फ्रीडम नहीं था मैम उस वक्त.
मैम आरक्षण भी तो मिल रहा है लड़कियों को.
हाँ, मिल रहा है. Okay,
बिहार
now
में मैम.
okay. Back to India again. आपको डिस्कस करना है what are the 3 changes which you saw and what was his feelings on India and Indian people, and what was his observations. वो क्या क्या उन्होंने देखा?
मैम सबसे पहले तो ट्रेन की गंदी खिड़की.
वो तो अभी भी दिखेगी तुमको. And
मैम
मैम चारों तरफ गरीबी.
बुराई चीज भी है तो
Everywhere.
अच्छाई भी तो है मैम।
हाँ, exactly. So according to A.M. Foster, आपको compile करना है what are the changes which he saw and what are his views on Indian people. And एक चीज और उन्होंने कहा है कि वो people are very much into religion. Religion के बारे में बहुत बात करते हैं, तंत्र मंत्र के बारे में बहुत बात करते हैं, भूत प्रेत पर विश्वास करते हैं। कोलकाता की एक जगह के बारे में बात करते हैं जहाँ पर अब कदम का पेड़ होता है ना, तो इट वाज
मैम वहाँ पे बहुत सारे होते हैं मैम, ये सब।
तो वहाँ पे एवरी नाइट एक आवाज आती थी, जो फल बहुत पक जाते हैं वो अपने आप गिरना शुरू करते हैं ना, वो गिरते हैं तो ढक ढक आवाज आती थी। तो वहाँ के जितने भी लोग थे उस पेड़ के आसपास के जितने लोग सब खाली कर दिए थे, यहाँ पर भूत प्रेत का वास है। और जब ये फॉस्टर ने देखा तो जांच वाच किया उन्होंने, researched, then he thought that it was the fruits were ripe, so the ripe fruits were falling on the shed of the there was a shed over there, एक shed का cow shed था वहाँ पे, और वहाँ पे वो जहाँ काउस को रखा जाता है, तो वहाँ पर उस कदम के पेड़ तक तक आवाज आ रही थी और लोग सोचे थे कि यार रात में आवाज कहाँ से आ रही है, so they thought it is some evil spirit. And when Foster researched, he said no, it was nothing of that sort. The fruit trees.
मैम भूत नहीं होता है ना?
नहीं,
देखने
आत्मा
के
होती
बाद
भी है
पता
मैम, भूत
लगेगा।
तो नहीं होता है।
So Foster saw that the views of Indians, they are very much religious, and they can turn anything into a ghost. तो कुछ भी को ghost बना दे सकते हैं। तो their imagination, the Indian people have so rich in imagination, कुछ का कुछ भी, and they will make a good night story. So
सबको पहले ऐसे ही लगता है मैम।
yeah.
लेकिन मैम कुछ कुछ चीजें ऐसी हैं जिसके पीछे मतलब साइंटिफिक रीजन भी नहीं और वो मतलब होता है।
Yeah, I do believe that, but then
जैसे भगवान होता है वैसे भूत भी होता है, मानने का बात है।
मैम इंडिया में छोटे
मतलब निगेटिव पावर होता है।
हाँ, नेगेटिव ऑरर्स होता है, नेगेटिव ऑरर्स जरूर होता है। There are some negative auras, positive auras. जैसे कोई इंसान है, आप खामोखा आप उसको देखते हैं, when you see them you feel angry. पता नहीं क्यों you feel angry because there is a negative aura about them, and there are a lot of people when you see them you feel happy. क्यों?
मैम हम जैसे सोच लेते हैं वैसा हो जाता है।
हाँ, exactly.
I think मैम I got.
Yeah. अगर आप अच्छा सोचते हैं तो अच्छा, the good things manifest, वो manifest हो जाता
Yes
है।
मैम।
अब बुरा ऐसा
Positive
होगा,
thinking.
कहीं ये ना हो जाए, कहीं ये वो हो जाता है actually. So when you start in a positive, when you start thinking in a positive way, positive things will happen. और लग रहा है ऐसा होगा, अगर ऐसा कहीं ऐसा ना हो जाए कहीं, तो वो जरूर हो जाता है, because whatever you're thinking, आपकी
मैम इंडिया में निगेटिव चीज पे ज्यादा लोग फोकस करते हैं।
अब आप ये फॉस्टर तो नहीं है कि हम कुछ कमेंट करें इसको, लेकिन आप फॉस्टर के बारे में सोचिए, और वो व्हाई डिड ही कम टू इंडिया, कुछ क्वेश्चंस हैं जो आपके कोर्स बुक में होगा, है ना। व्हाई डिड ही कम टू इंडिया, what are the changes he saw, what happened when he went to parties, why he did not like the buffet system, what were people discussing at the pen club,
मैम ये सब तो ऑब्जेक्टिव में नहीं आएगा इस बार।
तो आप जानोगे जब तो आप करोगे ना। ऑब्जेक्टिव जानने के लिए तो यू नीड टू नो द कंटेंट, कंप्लीट कंटेंट ना। Like how many times did Foster come to India? Once, twice, thrice, 4 times. हाँ, तो आप you can answer only when you know the content, right? All right, then that's it for today. Did you understand? Did you understand the? Did you understand
Yes,
the
ma'am.
lesson? Okay.